Hello and welcome to Life Support Live, the weekly live show that explores how Star Trek can help us to boldly go in our own lives to better ourselves and the rest of humanity.
Wow, that is so cool, Ali. I swear to God, that sounds exactly like... Oh, wait, it was! It was exactly what a famous starship captain once said. Which reminds me, you know, another famous starship captain also said no matter where our mission takes us, we'll try to have a little fun along the way.
Now, Dr. Trek, does that captain have a release date now of their own show? I believe they do.
When I quote it correctly on Twitter, it's the right show to the right day. No, it's like May 5th.
Yeah,
it's soon. We're going to hijack. It'll be May the 4th be with us, and then, oh yeah, well, here's Starfleet. So.
oh, yeah, here's Starfleet. Hello, everyone. I am psychologist Dr. Ali Mattu.
And I'm Dr. Trekland Nemecek. One of us is a real doctor.
And we'll leave it to you to determine who that might be. On this week's episode of Life Support Live, we are talking remote teamwork, inspired by this week's episode of Star Trek Prodigy, where we're talking... I'm surprised it's taken us this long to get to this topic, Larry. It's quite germane to the world right now. But before we get to that, let us know, what's your favorite example of a Star Trek story that involves remote teamwork? Right there, you can comment there somewhere. You can comment, and we'd love to hear from you, our lovely lifers. But before we get to that, Larry, for folks who might be joining us for the first time, what is this grand enterprise we are on?
Oh, I saw what you did there, although it's very tired.
Very tired is an apt description for much of what I do.
Morning, yeah. I know. Some folks it's not so tiring. Some folks that are coming from across the pond at 6 and 7 at night. But yeah, we've got people from all over the world joining us every Saturday, usually at this time, for Life Support Live, which we take a little Star Trek. We take a little tips for daily living. Sometimes it's as traumatic as I don't know, clinical depression, and sometimes it's as helpful as, 5 best ways to tie your shoes. But we always look at something that hopefully gets you through the day, thanks to Dr. Ali, with a little mashup on Star Trek, thanks to me and thanks to everybody. And that's what we call Life Support Live. So we're glad you're back with us. And if you've just found us for the first time, just really quick, if you're on Facebook, you will only see Facebook comments because we have a wonderful Lifers chat going. If you're on Twitch or YouTube, you'll see everything, just to know. And if you're coming to us on Twitch, we're not ignoring you. We try to see everybody as it pops up, but you may feel a little isolated.
Yeah.
Which in a pandemic, we don't want anyone to feel.
We don't want anyone. That's why we're here. We take topics from Star Trek and use them to help us understand how we can boldly go in our own lives. And Larry, to kick things off this week, to open up that briefing room, the part of the show where we do a deeper dive into the Star Trek canon to talk about these stories.
Because without a graphic, it's not real. Okay.
Without a graphic, it doesn't really happen. If there's a segment without a graphic, is it really a segment? I don't think so.
It's like a day without sunshine, but okay.
There we go. But this week's episode of we're not going to spoil anything for folks who haven't watched it. But if you haven't watched it, what a lovely episode you are missing. This episode of Star Trek Prodigy, it featured our crew, although they might not self-identify as a crew just quite yet. But they had to solve a problem across space and time. And
and what's a Star Trek without that that.
I know. I was thinking, how do I describe this without spoiling it? And then I realized my description, my non-spoiler description, applies to every Star Trek episode. If you really look at space-time as one concept. Now, which it is.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, because if you look at the whole thing as some kind of, if you don't look at the whole thing as some kind of cause and effect, it could be a disaster.
It could. It absolutely could. And, aren't we all just...
I mean, I'd be shattered. Yeah.
Larry, aren't we all just time's arrow, really, when you think about it?
All we are is dust in the wind. Oh, wait, that's not an episode. Okay.
That is one of two songs I do know how to play on the guitar. Dust in the Wind, because it was my final for this guitar class I took. And Blackbird is the other song I know, and I know nothing else. One day. One day I'll learn more songs.
One time back in, like, when I was in speech and debate in college, we were sitting through a what were they called? Basically your talks, illustrated talk or whatever.
Yeah. Your event.
And one of the other, like, with 5 other people at other colleges. And one time I was sitting and waiting to do mine, and another guy got up with a guitar. And basically his topic was, basic guitar techniques or something, but he was doing it by playing. And his opening was, he got up and he, like, looked at the judges, looked at the audience, sat down and just started playing. And he started playing the opening to the intro to Dust in the Wind.
There you go.
But he plays it for a few bits, and it's kind of like when they put the close up on the guitar player's solo on any kind of music, how they do the fingers and then they do a close up on anyway, he plays it for a few minutes and he's doon 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 doon, he does a few bars, finally looks out at the audience and he goes, of course, this is a complex technique. I'll never will forget that. Just in case we weren't impressed by his playing.
That was his opening line to his...
That was his opening line. Yeah.
It's not a complex technique because I learned it in my elementary intro guitar class. That was like...
Well, it's complex if you can't play the guitar.
I guess so. And this week's episode of Star Trek Prodigy featured a complex problem that had to be solved over space and time. How's that for
getting us back on
track? Stay on target. Don't cross the streams. So
it's a 4-7 from the East German judge. Okay.
I really love this episode, Larry, and when I was watching it, it was very clear to me that this could be a great metaphor for teamwork when you aren't all in the same time and space. So asymmetric teamwork, where people are working on something for a little bit and they kind of hand it off to someone else who might work on it at a different point in time, but also remote teamwork where you're not in the same space and time, which 35% of our labor force right now is experiencing some type of remote teamwork environment, and our future probably involves much more of it than our past did. So this is a really fun topic for us to dive into, and I think there's some interesting examples from Star Trek that we can pull to kind of help us understand this topic that many of us are going through right now.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Thank you, Jarrod, for posting our drinking game over here. Take a drink whenever anyone sings, anyone does an impression. Larry mentions McCoy. Larry, there was a birthday this week. Yep. Anyone mentions tapestry. Ollie brings up the Kelvin timeline. Anyone mentions plexing.
What was the last one?
The last one is take 2 drinks if you're at Jarrod's Zoomy chatty birthday thing.
Oh, okay.
I don't think I've mentioned plexing in a long time.
No,
I've been a good boy. Yeah.
You haven't.
Larry, my friend.
It's been a sobering time. We haven't mentioned a lot of those things. So
we haven't. You know what they say about time? It is the fire. Why is that not on the drinking game? I love stupid quote. Anyways,
you can only quote it if you change the noun in it. Time is the fire in which or the verb, I guess.
Oh, in which we churn.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Larry, where would you like to get started in our journey? Should we get started with
Let's start at the very beginning.
A very good place to start.
Wow, look at you. Look at you finally take a music cue. Okay.
Oh, they took 80
Well,
episodes here, Larry.
this was a quintessential one. Now this was teamwork where they were all pretty much this is original series, but by any other name, which I don't know that we've ever like really highlighted. So there we go. I thought it was a really good close up of teamwork. And also when you go teamwork, that means that the people who never get any credit also get to have like almost equal credit. So the classic Scotty gets it's not Kanar they're drinking, but
can you give us a little bit more on this episode? What's going on?
So the original Kelvin plot line to Star Trek was not the Kelvin universe, but the Kelvin Empire in the Andromeda Galaxy. We have invaders who are taking human form to assimilate, basically, and hijack the ship that they're around to use as a scout ship to return back to the Andromeda Galaxy from whence they came scouting for an invasion hundreds of years ago. Things move kind of slow on Kelva. And basically, the Enterprise, it's the thing where they have a power in their belt, which is amazing, to reduce everybody, living things to, like, they take all the water out and reduce them to crystals. So you wind up with these cool many-sided cubicles. You could game with those things. Everybody in the crew, the other 426 people, are reduced to those except for the lead 4 because they need them to run the ship, et cetera, et cetera. And they keep McCoy around to keep the other 3 healthy, I guess, anyway, which was their Achilles heel because the 4 of them realized the only way they can fight back against these invaders in human form. And we never see their original form, by the way, because it is 1967. But that's the Galaxy Quest nod to the actual form. But they attack them a little bit the way War of the Worlds is done, where the mighty invaders are felled by something simple instead of a microbe, a germ. In this case, it's human emotion. So all 4 of the leads work on 4 of the invaders, taking advantage of the fact that they're not used to human emotions and their human bodies. So McCoy injects one with vitamins that are really an irritant. Scotty gets one drunk. Spock gets Rojan jealous of Kirk, who's making out with the leader's mate there. So they all attack the problem in different ways. But it's kind of like a divide and conquer thing. But they're all working together. They're all more or less in the same space. They're not so remote, but they are remotely, as far as not working one-to-one, with each other. They've all gone off on a different path and done it. And of all the original series, there was another one that I'd thought of too, maybe, but of the episodes, that's one that really rang out that way.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our examples here feature different aspects of remote teamwork that we might be going through right now.
Everybody in the chat. I love the way you do that. Like my chat is never.
Is that your impression of me?
Yes.
You definitely got the figures.
Come on, everybody.
You got
the
figures down. Yeah.
Well, what else do you need to do?
Yeah. You should see my daughter do impressions of me. She makes me like a bumbling Bigfoot. She's like, do, I'm daddy, look at me. Oh my gosh.
She is shorter than you, right?
Oh, yes, by a lot.
Okay, well, that makes
She's
sense.
4 years old. Yeah, I guess so. I guess, hey, there you go, Larry. That's some good empathy. Empathy for the I was gonna say empathy for the forgotten or something, but that sounds like a TOS episode, doesn't it?
Empathy for the forgotten. Wow. Either that or like a season 1 Discovery or something.
Yeah, no, it's not long enough. For Discovery, it'd be empathy for the forgotten time sons of bliss. That would be Discovery.
For the wolves are forgotten, and I'm empathetic for the sheep.
Yes. There you go. That's the Discovery season 1 episode. Mm-hmm. Oh, okay. Page 2 here.
Lambs darker than night or death. Wait.
So, I had a motion picture example, but yours is better. So we're gonna go with yours. I really like
Say
this.
it. We can see if anybody in the chat wanders your way. But yeah, it's
Nah,
the
they
same
don't have to
kind of,
wander
like,
my way.
yeah.
Let's wander this way. So I want to talk about Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home. And
Is
this
this
is
the one with the whales?
the
Yeah.
one with the whales and time travel and the bird of prey. Um, buried alive. No, not that one. Not
Not that one.
Not that one.
No.
Two after that. Now, what's cool here, and this image is great, Larry, because this image really highlights it. Oh, I'm covering myself up.
Shout out to Scott for helping me last night.
Yeah, shout out to Scott for some last minute image acquisitions here. In Star Trek 4, we have many members of the crew involved in different aspects of this mission. Now, they all know the ultimate goal is to get these whales and return them to the 23rd century. But they all have their own unique submissions. Getting to the whales, getting the containment up, refueling the ship, all that sort of stuff. And so what's so wonderful about this movie is they're all doing this independently and remotely of each other. They're not in the same place solving the same problem. They're not even on the same ship.
Right.
So it's a good example of everyone knew what they had to do, and now they were sent out and trusted independently to do those things for this ultimate mission.
And even to fix things when things go wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Such as Chekhov being injured and captured, interrogated as a Soviet spy. Spoilers. And McCoy having a whole scene on his own, so he's not totally subservient to the guy that got lost in the part. So,
is just looking at our comments here, Larry, is this the most quotable Star Trek film? I think it is. I think it absolutely is.
I think it just about is.
Yeah. I think a lot of people quote Wrath of Khan, but when they quote Wrath of Khan, they're quoting like the same one or two lines, When it comes to Star Trek 4, you can, double dumbass on you. Colorful metaphors. There be whales here.
Hello, computer.
Hello, computer. One of my favorites. He did a little too much LDS in the
nuclear. Yeah, LDS. Nuclear vessels. Alameda. Yeah, everything.
That's what I said. Alameda. Oh my gosh, Alameda is a very hard place to get in and out of. How do you feel? We could be here all day, Larry, and we will.
Want some more Kanar?
Oh, don't get them started. Libby said we need a song to the tune of Dust in the Wind called Kanar at Quark's Bar.
All we are is Kanar at Quark's Bar. Yeah.
Open that bottle, take a sip of Kanar and let it wash you down.
I hold my glass.
Pouring out Kanar and all your hopes and dreams.
Only for a moment does the Kanar look pourable. Okay. Bad.
Oh, bad to the Kanar. Okay. Moving right along here.
Please.
Let's talk about TNG. Now, Larry, if you're going to talk about...
Did you just come in from an infomercial or something? All right. Now, let's talk about TNG. All right. Okay.
If we're talking about TNG, we're most definitely going to talk about The Chase. What a wonderful episode this was, Larry. Now, talking about remote teamwork here, we have teamwork across space-time.
You can put the picture up for more than a nanosecond.
Yeah, but then I don't get to talk about space-time. Okay.
Go ahead. Talk a little bit.
Okay.
That's such can I just say that when this episode aired, this was so historic. You know why?
Why?
This is the first time that Cardassians, Romulans, Klingons, and humans had all been on the same screen together.
Well, you're right, because we didn't have Cardassians sharing the screen in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country.
Right. Well, the Cardassians were only a year or two old here.
Yeah. This is also the first time we had a founder sharing the screen with.
It's not a founder.
I know.
Don't ruin this proud moment. Okay. First time female Cardassian, also, by the way.
Oh, yeah. So as Scott says, this episode blew my mind. So here we have the chase. Now, you
tied up this big Star Trek. It's okay to have 4 bumpy head, forehead aliens.
Yeah, this episode
It's not our fault.
It's really beautiful, everything this episode does. Not only is it giving us a canonical explanation for why all Star Trek aliens look alike, it's not the makeup budget, folks. It was by design by this ancient species.
It's canon. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And it's never spoken of again. Much like O'Brien's millennial torture and trauma that he goes through. And then the next episode, let's go on a holiday adventure. No, but this is a really important episode. So to sum it up, we have this this interstellar puzzle, archaeological puzzle, that once put together reveals that an ancient species was dying, and it seeded many different planets with the primordial goo that allowed them to evolve into these different species. And so what everyone here learns is that they're related. They have a common ancestor, which explains why these humanoids look so similar. But it was the great hope of this species that by working together, they would better understand each other, overcome some of their problems. And this would be the only way to solve this puzzle would be to work together. So it would bring their children together. And then I love how some of these people react. Like, even the notion that a Cardassian is related to a Romulan, it makes me sick. But what an example of...
And then Worf and the Klingon say, hold our blood wine. Yeah.
Well, the Cardassians put away the Kanar. Now, this is a really lovely episode for many reasons. And Larry, it's a great episode of remote teamwork.
Yes, it is. It's a great episode also for you learn about Picard and his and Professor Gagan. Gagan, that's the Voth. Galen, Richard Galen, and the whole thing of Picard's archaeological, insight and the fact that he almost went that way, and the whole Kurlan Naskos, which apparently he doesn't care about when the Enterprise D crashes. Spoilers in Generations. But no, it's got so many great levels, and they're all running around on this great. What's funny is like the Enterprise is zipping around at warp 9 to put this.
Oh, it's going everywhere.
Yeah. But so you said founders. Were you being funny?
Making a joke.
Did you mean to say the preserver?
Yeah, well, or as
Which
Cairo...
is what I asked Ron back in the day if that was supposed to be like one of the preservers, as from Miramani's planet, and he said, "Well, it could be. It's so TNG. Like don't link it to the original series. Don't link it to the."
As Cairo says, she's not a founder. She's a sphere builder. So there's a lot of things she could be. I do. Charlotte says over here, attended Muhammad Noor's panel at a con a few years ago in which he explained how unlikely the scenario is from a scientific perspective. Yeah, there's if you I think one of the best, most concise descriptions of genetic diversity on alien planets comes from Carl Sagan's response to Star Wars. Have you seen that video when he was on Johnny Carson?
I know I have, but why don't you refresh us?
I was hoping. Larry, I think this is your best impression.
Well, it's because you grew up with Carson doing it on the Tonight Show over and over again. But would you please enlighten us with your star stuff, Ali? I've heard it billions and billions of times, but
oh my gosh, I'm gonna cry. It's so good. It's so funny. When you say star stuff, it's just so good.
I think there's still 4 or 5 people watching. Okay, go ahead. So go ahead.
um, uh, uh, Johnny Carson asks Carl Sagan what he thinks of Star Wars, this new movie. And Carl Sagan sort of talks about how insulting it is that everyone in Star Wars is white, and that if you had people growing up evolving on these different planets, that the likelihood that a life form that evolves on Mars would look anything and function anything like a human that evolved on Earth, it's not possible. It just wouldn't happen
Because of the very primordial ooze.
Yes.
Goo, as you would say. Yeah.
And then he kind of goes on to say, like, not only would they not look anything like human, but like, the chance that they were going to be all white, it's just not. And Johnny Carson kind of looks and goes, aha. He just doesn't know what to say. It's a
Well,
great
what is it?
clip.
It's like 1977,
Yeah.
probably. So
Yeah.
no one's thought of those things. Oh, diversity? Oh, they're not thinking of Earth diversity on TV, much in media, much less galactic diversity.
Right. And
Except for a makeup award.
And so getting back to Charlotte's comment over here, with what Mom and Noor was saying, yeah, I mean, scientifically, this is not, they wouldn't look like this, but it's a great explanation for how Star Trek saves money on makeup. It really is.
Mhm.
It really
And
is.
and a great look at the cave set without, being overly decorated and darkly lit.
That's true. Is that Planet Hell over here?
Mhm.
Is this what we're looking at? Yeah.
Well, it's the cave set. Planet Hell was all of 16, but yeah, that's the cave set.
I also like in this episode, we haven't spoken about this, but what is, do you remember Picard's mentor's name here? He kind of appears in the beginning.
Were you asleep when I was talking about that?
Probably.
Richard Galen?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you. What's also cool about this episode is it shows you how the work of one person continued in another person. And that's something that really can only happen through written communication. Like, Larry, if we didn't have written communication, none of this stuff would really be possible as much. I mean, there's a lot you can transmit through spoken communication, but if we didn't have this stuff, every generation would kind of be not starting from scratch, but not really starting in the place that we're at. Whereas over here, you're able to see Picard can pick up the work of his mentor even after he dies because it's all been documented, which I think is another key.
Well,
thing
you're back
here.
in the realm of all the, at least in the Americas, all the native languages that nobody had a written language until Sequoia came up with an alphabet for Cherokee, and that's and that wasn't until the early 1800s. So.
Yeah, and I like Charlotte's question here. It also begs the question, would humans still resemble humans after living on another planet for generations? And she's not referring to Star Trek Generations. If you live on a Nexus, you end up looking like...
Nexi.
Yeah, very holiday, actually. You might look like a lumberjack or that you're celebrating Christmas. And then Guinan will show up, and you're like, what? And then Guinan will show up in the new trailer for Star Trek Picard, and you're like, what? But I
don't know. I'm sorry. You went down that path, and I was thinking, okay, well, it's a new song. Well, I'm celebrating Christmas, and I'm okay.
I'm celebrating Christmas in the Nexus, and hooray. So, Charlotte, if you like...
A carol all night and a bake all day? Okay.
Charlotte, if you like that, I'm assuming you've watched The Expanse. I'm assuming you have, because Expanse is probably...
Just about to say The Expanse.
Yeah, it gets the closest to dealing with those kind of issues.
They've been a generation or two apart, and they've, or 3 maybe, and they're physiologically growing dissimilar.
Yeah.
You see that when you have an astronaut in space for 2 weeks, and they have to get...
Yeah.
You can already see the effects on their body just from that short a time.
Oh, yeah.
Just in orbit, just in Earth orbit.
I love how Expanse, it's like, Earth, well, let's protect Earth. And Mars is like, we're Martians, and we're going to protect Mars. And the Belter's like, we're Belters. Everybody's screwing us. That's That's my impression of Expanse season 1.
And it's a 4-7 from the East German judge again. Okay.
Charlotte says, I have not seen The Expanse. Charlotte, you're in for a treat. Watch out for spoilers. The show is complete. Go to Amazon Prime. Check it out. You're gonna really enjoy yourself. It's a great show.
Show run by Narain Shankar, who cut his teeth on Star Trek for many years.
That's right. One of the many great sci-fi shows brought to us by a Star Trek alum.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Larry, let's move on here. We got a lot more Star Trek to talk about here.
But stay tuned. There's much more Star Trek to come.
And now a message from our sponsor, Coffee. Are you tired? Do you wish you could have a little pick-me-up that is equally delicious? Well, have I got the beverage for you? Coffee.
I was just going to go with Life Support Live is brought to you by the letter L and the number 4.7.
Number 4.7. Larry, let's talk about, this is an example that our community here, speaking of remote teamwork, we've got a lot of teamwork always coming in from our lifers here, bringing in the best and greatest examples from the entire Star Trek canon.
Except for that one, but other than that.
So
Libby, you know what?
Yeah.
I just see this. Charlotte's on fire here this morning, but I was thinking after you said to Chase, really, there's a couple other next gens that hit me too. But one is, but Disaster is one where they literally have to remotely work together because they're all. I was kidding at the beginning. We were talking about the Prodigy episode, but there's the timey-wimey of cause and effect is a little part of that too. But the Disaster, Disaster when they're all cut off within the ship.
Yeah, this is the episode I misremembered last week as the other episode where they all have like amnesia. Disaster.
Yeah,
Disasters are a really cool example because their communication is cut off. And so, one of the things we know about remote teamwork that's so important is having quick, fast, reliable, synchronous communication really helps, but they don't have that. And they don't even have like email. They can't like send or like instant message. They can't do that. So they're all just kind of trapped solving their own problems. But I love
arguing their own arguments. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, they are. But in some ways, Larry, that episode feels like the most astronaut-y episode because astronauts are so trained to work the problem. Like, don't panic.
Astronauts. I thought you were going for astronauty. But okay, I was going to say
no. That would be more Star Trek Discovery. I think would get into that territory. Astronauty. That's a joke I'm going to put in my back end for later.
I was thinking Lower Decks actually, but go ahead.
Oh yeah, sure. That too. Just not Star Trek Prodigy. No naughtiness there.
No. Lots of astro, very little naughty.
Yeah. But astronauts are so... Charlotte's asking what is happening. Charlotte, we don't know. We don't know. Time is the fire in which we learn.
We learn, yeah.
Yeah.
Turn, for there is a season.
So one of the things that astronauts are so well trained at is solving the immediate problem in front of them, not panicking, identify what's the problem, solve
Let's work the problem, people.
Work it! You almost went into Janeway territory there, Larry.
No, I was doing Ed Harris's Gene Kranz from Apollo 13. What I was trying to do. Let's work the problem, people. Failure is not an option.
There you go. There you go. Houston, we have an impression here. And that episode, Disaster, is a great example of our crew trying to solve the immediate problem in front of them, not doing some grand adventure or shepherding ambassadors across the galaxy, but they're just trying to keep the ship from exploding, which is really lovely.
Kind of brings the plot home, kind of focuses one, yes, leaves you centered. But we were about to jump series.
We were about to jump series. We're going to jump into DS9. Cairo just mentioned, speaking of DS9, Cairo mentioned remote teamwork makes me think of the sound of her voice, where all the Defiant crew is being coached by that remote voice. I didn't think of that example. Cairo, what a great example that is. Larry, let's talk about the sound of her voice just for a moment. Now here, it's again across space-time, much like this week's episode of Star Trek Prodigy, and we have this voice that we discover later is from the past, which is coaching the crew and helping the crew, and the crew is working together to try to get to this captain who needs
Who's
help.
crash landed on a planet, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right. And also winds up kind of like halfway counseling some of them along the way.
Yes. And that's what I was going to say is the human connection is just beginning, Larry. What's so wonderful about this episode is they've never met her. They don't know her.
Lisa Cusack, isn't it?
I don't know.
Wow. I think that's it. Wow. Okay. Sounds like a human.
I tip my hat to you. That sounds real. It might not be, but it sounds good to me.
I could just be being very namist here and assuming she's human, but go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, well, go ahead. Most of the Federation does anyways. But Larry, I there's two things that come to mind here. If I might just dip my toes into the counselor's log just for a moment. One of the things we've learned about the pandemic is it's less real life loneliness, but perceived loneliness. That's the problem. It's how much connection you perceive to have with other people, whether it's through text, through Zoom, through email. There we go. I can hands touching hands.
I didn't even mean to go Apollo on you. I was touch,
reaching out.
Cry for the children. Okay.
Cry for our listeners. They have to listen to this, Larry. But don't cry for me, Larry Nemecek. Okay.
Alpha quadrant. Okay.
Stay on target. We were talking about the sound of her voice and perceived loneliness. So one of the things that's really cool about this episode is you see that she feels connected to this crew. That crew is not actually there, but she feels like she does have this connection to them. And that's what one of the lessons that's come out of the pandemic is how much you feel like you are connected to other people is more important than how many people are actually around you, because we might all be in these remote places. So perceived connection is incredibly important. The other thing, Larry...
tell me if this is too mental healthy, but it's a lot like how people feel totally disconnected and there's no pandemic and they live in New York City.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or Mumbai or something, and they're bumping into billions of people a day and they still feel totally alone.
Yeah, New York City, when I first moved there, it was, it's a very easy place to feel alone. Very much so.
Isn't this a country song or something about?
Probably. If
about,
not, we could make one up.
Isn't there a line somewhere about being in the city and so totally being alone or something?
I never felt so alone and sitting on my stoop. And
okay, forget it. I didn't.
New York City.
Dreamed all that. Forget it.
Yeah. Maybe it's a Garth Brooks song. I could see that being a Garth Brooks song. Standing on the... Wait, no. I was going to sing Standing on the Dock of the Bay. No, what's his song about? Standing outside the fire.
Oh, okay.
Okay, whatever.
Isn't there one about living in the city ain't anyone's idea of being alone? Anyway, forget it.
Sure.
Moving right along.
The other thing that I think is really cool about the sound of her voice is while she's not physically there, she is able to counsel them in some ways, support them, just through the sound of her voice, which is also something we've seen with the pandemic is... telehealth has really been
remote learning, remote coaching.
It's not always easy. It's not
telehealth.
It's not automatic, but it is also possible. So a great episode example, Cairo. Thank you for that, and thank you for all the tangents and asides that led us to. Okay, but the other example that we wanted to bring up was actually an example Libby brought up, and Libby said the entire Dominion War arc of DS9, a lot of remote teamwork.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. I think
We focused on one.
we focused on one. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Here it is. So, Larry, we were talking specifically about the series of episodes in which our crew retakes We're going to retake. I can't do Cisco. Retake Deep Space Nine.
We're going to retake Deep Space Nine, people. Yeah.
No, that's not good either. Stick to Carl
I can't
Sagan,
get that
my
deep.
friend. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't do it either. I don't even have.
I can't do my bass fiddle impersonation.
I don't have a baseball on me or anything quite like it to throw up in the air. We're going to retake. No, can't do it.
We're going to retake Deep Space Nine.
How would Carl Sagan say it, Larry?
We're going to retake Deep Space Nine.
That pale gray dot over there.
that small gray dot. Space. Yeah.
Oh.
Moving right along.
So
but the point was that they were literally, the people on the station were trapped there under occupation, or they chose to stay. But you've got Rom devising the whole self-replicating mind plot, but then he's thrown in the brig, and then Quark actually comes up and double-fistedly shoots and frees them all.
Yeah.
And meanwhile Cisco's doing their bit on the ship, but you've seen Cisco standing on a bridge before, so it's not that different. But they're doing their thing out with the fleet, trying to attack, and they meet in the middle on DS9. Yeah.
Now who's the one who sounds like an advertisement? Yeah, you're totally right, and so to some degree, this is not to some degree, this is absolutely a military initiative here,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the things that effective militaries are very good at is orders and commands and sort of marching orders. And so what you'll see in this episode, but you also see this in real life battles, and I think it's a good lesson for any teams that need to work effectively, is you don't tell a squadron, well, so we're going to want you to warp in right over here, and then once you're there, we want you to do a deep dive, and then we want you to go around the Romulans, and then we want you to go up past the Cardassians, and then you're going to be right there at DS9, then do a cool Nova Squadron maneuver, Alpha 1 variant. No, because...
And bring back a couple of lattes.
And bring back... Yeah. No foam, extra cinnamon, because that plan is going to fail. It's too complicated. And it doesn't allow for the real world variability of what's going to actually happen here. But you do tell people, like Squadron A, you're going to protect the wormhole. Squadron B, you're going to take on the Cardassians. Squadron C, you're going to try to punch a hole. Squadron D, you're going to try to go through that hole. So it's a very simple, what is our mission, what is our goal, and it gives the captains and the ships flexibility in how to implement that goal when they're actually on the battlefield. It's something that I think a lot of teams can do so much better, clearly communicating what are we doing and why, and then giving a lot of people independence to move forward on that goal on their own, in their own way, in a way that works for them. So I think
it's sounding like an away mission counselor's log-ish bit there.
Yeah,
without the graphic.
Without the graphic, I like to dip my toes there, Larry, whenever possible. But a lot of life lessons.
A lot of toe dipping here today.
Well, I'd like to dip them.
As opposed to toe rises in honor of D. Kelly. But okay.
Oh, yeah. It would have been his how much birthday?
102nd. His centennial was 2 years ago, and it got just totally ignored. I tried to yell about it, but
I love that you discovered that the fourth Doctor also had this. Was it the
Oh,
fourth
well, I
Doctor?
don't know that I discovered it, but I know. Yeah,
You noted it. Fourth or sixth? I always forget.
the Tom Baker. Yeah.
Tom Baker is number four. Number six. I think he's number six. I think.
No, it's just Hart. Look, I'm not even a Who fan. It's Hartnell, Pertwee. I mean, Hartnell and Troughton, Pertwee, and then Tom Baker.
Destroy the Larry.
If we ever had a Who and Trek crossover beyond comics, I just want the invaders. I want to hear the Borg coming along saying, I want to hear the Daleks running along going, assimilate, assimilate, assimilate.
Assimilate!
Mm-hmm.
What if the Borg assimilate the Daleks and the thing they take away from them is their voice?
Oh, no way.
Yeah, if they can penetrate their armor, that really expensive looking armor the Daleks have.
Mm-hmm.
What if the only thing they take away is their voice? And then you have the Borg.
Everybody say, we surrender here.
Yeah,
please.
yeah, I know.
Do this,
I know.
please.
We surrender.
Right.
Just shut up. You can have our biological distinctiveness, but just stop talking. Gosh. Borg. They used to be so mono sounding.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Charlotte asks, "What is happening?" I don't know, Charlotte.
Again?
Yeah. Okay, so moving right along here,
Voyager,
Larry. We wanted to talk about Voyager, and another example that a lot of people brought up. I think Zahir was probably the first one to bring it up, if I can Voyager, Pathfinder. Zahir was the first one to really mention this. And so, where is my image of Pathfinder?
I took here. Pathfinder. There's more. The original show Pathfinder episode, but then the Pathfinder mission, was a recurring. The last couple of years, the show was a recurring theme, and so I did Pathfinder 1 better, where it wasn't just about. Boy, these are all blowing out. I guess because we're packing in too much. It was like not just the communication of getting the ship home, but then it was like a triangulation of third parties, i.e. these Ferengi, trying to hijack 7 of 9 to harvest their nanoprobes. Spoilers. So it was like the three were working together, or the two sides were working remotely to identify and stop the Ferengi. So,
Yeah, there's a lot of great examples.
It's like Pathfinder times 2 or something.
There's a lot of great examples with Barclay trying to get contact with Voyager. And at first I was thinking about it, I'm like, Voyager, well, they're always together. They're not really interacting with anyone. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute. All those times they did interact with the Alpha Quadrant. Dan also mentions Message in a Bottle, which is another great example of this. And so this is what I think is really cool about this week's episode is besides us, I don't know what we're doing.
The Prometheus and the other EMH, the Andy Dick EMH.
Yeah, the EMH Mark II, the Andy Dick EMH. Yeah, absolutely. What's cool about this week's episode, Larry, is we're really these examples from Star Trek are highlighting a lot of the different things that are needed to make remote teamwork work. And one of the things that you see with Voyager is the clear need for communication. Now, it doesn't have to be synchronous. It doesn't have to be like this, you and I talking in real time. It can be asynchronous, more like the way our comments work, where there's some, they're not immediate, but they are, you're able to communicate with some frequency. There's no way Voyager can coordinate at all with the Alpha Quadrant without some form of communication. That seems to be probably the most important thing here.
You realize you just said there's no way Voyager can communicate with the Alpha Quadrant without communication.
That means I've been having too much Kanar. There's no way they can coordinate with the Alpha Quadrant, which is what I meant to say. And I
was going to say no, there isn't.
And they do once they are in communication. Don't they go on a mission? Doesn't I remember that some episode where Janeway says, we're going on our first mission from Starfleet Command, and
Well, it's Friendship 1.
yeah, Friendship 1. Right.
Go USPA. Yes.
Yeah.
USPA is on the USPA seal is on the missile. So anyway, thank you, Jeff Mendel.
So that being said, Larry, I guess it didn't make much of a difference at the end of the day having that. Like, it didn't help them to get back to the Alpha Quadrant any faster, either in that first timeline version or the future Janeway version, did it?
What's it? What are you talking about?
Getting in touch with the Alpha Quadrant. It was good for the families. It was good for
morale. It was good mental health and got people caught up.
Yeah.
It saved all that. Saved all of that mess.
Unless you're Maquis.
What? Oh, yeah.
Unless you're Maquis, in which case it's pretty depressing.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
But yeah, people debate the finale. The finale felt very rushed, and people don't know about spending a whole season back on Earth, but people wanted to see that crew come back to Earth and deal with stuff, even in, and we did, but it was all fake. Here's everything that happened. Oh, just kidding. Erase that. Wipe it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I agree. The finale kind of made it about whether or not this crew makes it back, and I don't know. It felt like while that might have been the genesis of the show, it really is not what the show became. The show really became about these characters, but anyways, moving right along here, Larry. Let's talk about. It's been a long road getting to here, but let's do it. Let's take this road. Let's talk about Enterprise.
That's kind of a shortcut, because what really brought it to mind was the two ships' crews. Like, Trip is over on the Columbia. This is. I've gone blank on the Enterprise on the episode, but they're having to work together. They share a static warp bubble shell there, which was, all these visuals are so amazing. It's like, and we're going to cut you off now that we've got the point we can do stuff like this. Sorry, we'll have a drought of 12 years before we have episodic Star Trek again.
Yeah, I like the Columbia storyline. I love that the writers named the ship after the shuttle Columbia that we lost during that time. It's a nice way to honor that crew. I also like how a big part of that storyline is, how does Starfleet make two ships work? How do they coordinate? How do they share knowledge? How do they share crew? How do they share resources? How do they share strategic missions?
When there's only enough budget to pay for one set of 8 regular actors.
Yes, that. Just focus on the captain. Have Trip be the engineer. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and just go back and forth.
But it is pretty cool to see.
Poor Kelby.
Starfleet has to change how it works to be able to function as now a fleet, as opposed to just one ship, one little ship out there exploring the vast cosmos. That was horrible. That was not good, Larry. Yours is good.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you impersonating something?
I was trying, and I failed miserably.
Okay.
I can do a good Schwarzenegger. I should do, when you do Sagan, we should have a pretend show where it's you doing Carl Sagan and me doing Arnold Schwarzenegger. Talking about science fiction.
Some would say this is a pretend show, but okay.
Oh man. Moving right along here, Larry. I did want to talk about the Kelvin.
And you know what? I don't want to jump totally out of Enterprise, but well, let's keep moving along. But I'm not saying that there wasn't anything else happening in Enterprise that wasn't a remote teamwork kind of episode.
There's especially as Dan kind of points out here, a lot of the human Vulcan storylines, and then human Andorian, and then human Vulcan Andorian. There's a lot of good remote teamwork happening here between these folks.
And if you don't blink and miss it, there's even little human Andorian Vulcan Tellarite cooperation.
But if you do blink, you will miss it. I love Cairo referencing one little ship that goes on a little trip. Uh, oh, Star Trek. Um, okay, moving right along to the Kelvin timeline right over here. I did want to just kind of speak to this one. Here we see Kelvin Scotty on board the Vengeance, a ship that could only have been created with the brain of a 300-year-old frozen man.
What a waste of so many millions of dollars. Okay.
There's things I like about Star Trek Discovery. There's things I don't like about
Well, it was a great advocate for physical fitness because everybody is running everywhere. I'm shocked, I tell you, to see that communicating is going on there. So, but he ran to stop to pull out his communicator and then talk a little.
That's right. Well, it's a big cavernous cargo bay. Very big. I mean, that ship is pretty big, and it seems to be run by 5 people. So, so anyways, the whole Scotty storyline here. He's protested, doesn't want to serve when he doesn't know what's inside these containers. He says, like, I got this really beautiful warp core here that we filmed at Northern California, right, not too far away from where I live, and I don't know what stuff is in here. This could, like, make things go kaboom. Little did he know they were frozen eugenics or soldiers. But anyways, spoilers from me. Scotty is working, ends up working on his own mission to try to figure out what's going on here, and is doing that all by himself, and is also on a different ship.
No, he has the audience with him.
Yes. And it's this again gets to the real importance of having good regular communication, and that whole side mission is all possible only because of that. So yeah, just wanted to point that out.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's our one Kelvin reference for every, I wanted to say 47 shows, but yeah. Not quite, but yeah.
All right. Moving right along here, Larry. What comes next? I think.
Well, if you go to Discovery.
Yeah, I think we've got Discovery here. Let me see if I can find my Discovery example. Where is my...
So far behind in the chat. I've done a bad job today.
I don't think I have an image for the Discovery one, Larry, but one of the things I wanted to talk about was that intragalactic mind meld we saw in...
I forgot that one. Yeah, I mean, sorry, we didn't...
No, that's okay. But in
intergalactic mind meld.
I think it's intragalactic, with a galactic mind meld that we saw here in season 1.
It's still within the Milky Way.
Yeah. We saw that in season 1 of Star Trek Discovery with Michael communicating with her adopted father, Sarek, and how pivotal that was really to the end of that season, or at least to what Michael needed in that moment to kind of move forward. And again, one of the common themes I'm seeing here is the need for the right type of communication at the right time that is also tied to the goals and objectives of the team. Like, it seems to be the critical thing that keeps coming up in all of these examples.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool. I'm glad we covered that one in depth. And rounding things about, we have here Star Trek Picard, and specifically...
Although I want to say that it's like the entire cast of Picard, since it was a crew heist. It was a mission series, so the season 1 was a whole mission. It's like gather people together for this mission. So it was like every episode was another person doing their thing. Whether it was Raffi, getting on the comm and calling in her brownie points, or Jarrod, when Jarrod wasn't killing people. Or Rios using his. I mean, everybody was putting their 2 cents in for Picard's wacky mission. So it was very like mission or the whole series was mission oriented.
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. We're even now. That's cool.
I know. But what we have here is Picard wanted he wanted more ships from Starfleet in the beginning of that season. He didn't get it. He had a lot of hubris, a lot of frelling hubris, indeed. Fracking hubris. He had a lot of fracking hubris.
Streams.
Frelling, you haven't seen Farscape, Larry?
I watched the first one or two, and then I was like, I don't remember.
It's so radically different from all other science fiction, which is, I think, why it's hard to get into. But if you are able to stick with it, why it's very rewarding. It's also the only science fiction show in which pop culture exists, like 20th century pop culture exists. Because you watch Star Trek and it's like, gosh, all these people do is, besides Sherlock Holmes, the only thing they do, the only pop culture that exists is like classical music.
I'm sorry, did you not watch Voyager and Tom Paris?
Yeah, but not like does he talk about real pop culture? Like he doesn't talk about Star Wars or sitcoms.
Did you not see Movie Night on Enterprise?
Yeah, but
I mean, Tom Paris is sitting there with popcorn with his 3D glasses on, watching,
Okay, true.
Godzilla movies.
Let me rephrase. I guess like they're never watching stuff that we watched or listen. Well, besides Kelvin, we got the Beastie Boys.
Star Trek is it's either classical music or it's something that happened between 1950 and 1990. And now in the Kelvin universe, it's like Beastie Boys, or it's like nobody. I want to see somebody in the 24th century running around talking about crazy stuff from the 22nd century.
Yes, exactly. Like I would love to see that too. Yeah, and okay, Charlotte says jazz. Sure, but like they're never really talking about stuff that like we are actually into. Farscape does that really well. Farscape. Yeah. Anyways, just a little nod for people who haven't seen Farscape to check it out.
Extremely little. Extremely little.
Getting back on track here. So Picard, he wanted this fleet. He didn't get it. He talked to Riker. He was able to explain to Riker, and he had more information at this time too, like what was going on and the help he needed. And Riker was in a better position to be able to do something about it, and
like cut and paste a whole fleet.
Yeah, I know. I was so annoyed. At that. I'm like,
The secret is a lot of their staff was very annoyed too. But
yeah, no. I mean, my headcanon explanation for that is this showing us a further militarization of Starfleet, where they just have an assembly line of these warships that they're churning out.
Is that or a really good sale that night? Yeah.
The economics of the future are slightly different, and they become even more different by the time Star Trek Picard rolls around. Yeah.
I'd like to think there were more people than the 2 or 3 we saw who went, wait a minute, she's Vulcan and her name is O?
And she wears sunglasses.
At night. No.
Yeah.
I wear my sunglasses at night. Okay.
Nice one. Larry, I think that brings us up to speed. We didn't, was there any, hold on. There's examples from our community here. Let me make sure I get.
Oh, them.
Yeah.
No, I'm sorry, guys. I have not been. I'm so way far.
Linda said the TOS Mirror episode, Mirror, all of the OGs had to work together secretly to get back to their universe without getting killed first. I feel like this is a classic Mirror Universe storyline here. It's like, we have to secretly work together to get back. That's a great example,
Well, if
Linda.
you openly work together to get back, then you're going to be found out. So yes.
Zahir says, TNG interface. Talk about remotely managing your employees. Zahir, I apologize. I do not remember which episode this
That's
is.
the one with Geordi in the interface suit, his mother and father. Yeah.
Right,
Nat
right.
Sinclair, who was channeling a past life as the captain of the Saratoga from 100 years earlier. And Ben Vereen, who gave up a promising dance career to go into Starfleet science. Yeah.
Great pick. Zahir had another one here.
You know what? I remember. Can I just say seriously? I
You
remember
may.
when that interface was a very techie, digitally. Interface was a sciencey, buzzword sounding title. But I remember the whole thing because it was a telepresence. It was a virtual reality suit, basically, and you could project yourself into a situation. Anyway, I just remember trying to wrap my head around that in 1993 or whatever, and going, now what? Now what? Now what?
How does that work?
It's like today it's just like go Oculus yourself, and But back then, I just remember kind of trying to having to wrap my head around what they were talking about.
Yeah, what's funny is we've made so much progress. You can buy an Oculus for a fraction of a cost of what this stuff was budgeted out to be in
Geordi's
the 90s.
Cost, yeah, it's a prop.
Yeah, and you have formerly Facebook, now Meta, talking about how we can work together in the metaverse. But then you look at what they're pitching, and it looks terrible. Like these really avatar-based meetings. It's not, So like in some ways we've come so far, and in some ways we have so much farther to go here. Zahir had another episode here from Enterprise, the Anir, which is also a great pick. I forgot about that one. Good pick. Charlotte.
Anar, yeah.
Anar? Is it Anar, not Anir?
I thought it was Anar, but I've got
we got three different potentials.
I've got to go back and watch it again. I just always in my head said the Anar, but okay.
Is this a new Kanar situation we have here?
Anar. I know, it's just one more word for you. See, that's why I'm trying to stomp this down before it becomes one more word for the...
Stomp the stamp.
Stomp the stamp.
Charlotte says Night Terrors, which I also watched this week. Aliens trying to communicate through unconventional means by humanoid standards to work together to get you both out of a bad situation.
Bad situation, yes.
Like floating through a nightmare.
Well, like floating through the nightmare of an episode. I just remember... Nobody ever wanted to admit that Flying Troy was an episode that had ever been done, even though it's a great idea. The execution of the show was a little.
Yeah, I think the ideas in the episode are cool, and like I always love how Star Trek goes to, all right, when Star Trek goes to Universal Translator's not working. We kind of don't know, how to fix this. We've got
we don't know,
Yeah, we don't know, I always love those episodes. Linda says, is the Borg Collective an example of teamwork? Absolutely. It is. I
mean, the ultimate outcome is teamwork, but it's not like everybody's in there to,
No.
It's kind of enforced. It's kind of like, well, yeah, a slave colony is teamwork or something.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate that we don't know more about
Bridge on the River Kwai or something. I don't know. Yeah.
I wish we knew more about the evolution of the Borg and how they went from more independent to the more collective-based. But at some point, people opted into it, kind of like that Voyager episode where Chakotay joins this pseudo collective. There was some opting in. That's a real episode, right, Larry? I'm not making that up. I'm having this doubt in my head. I'm like, wait, that's a real episode that happened.
When Chakotay joins a collective,
doesn't he join this like group of former?
Yeah,
drones.
Not former. There's a. He's there. By what is it? By President? Oh, it's Memorial. It's the fighters, right?
Yeah.
and it's not physically there. They figure out it's a memorial beacon in the end, but all of them he's having like PTSD wake up moments, and he doesn't know why.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
See, we have the guest drinking game and the dress.
Yeah. When we were laughing.
Rom or Little Green Men. Yeah.
Libby brought up Little Green Man, and then Charlotte jokes. All right, who had 11:21 Pacific for when Libby would bring up Little Green Man? Dan had a great example here. Speaking of the Kelvin timeline, consulting Spock about Khan into darkness is one of my favorite examples of a remote teamwork. So this is a cool example. It is the view screen, again, communication, bringing in an expert when it's contextually relevant to get feedback from that person about how to overcome this obstruction. That is a really cool example. Really ties into 2001. Not 2001. What year is it? It's 2022. Where the heck did I get 2001 from? The year we make contact.
That'll teach me to read chat, not look at you. Okay.
What I love about that episode, it also speaks to one of the cool things that's happened because of the changes in how people are working. It's a lot easier now to bring an expert into your organization or to your team. Everyone knows now how to use Zoom. Everyone knows how to join a meeting. So it's so much easier to get interviews, experts, feedback in a way that Spock does when he's trying to contact Spock Prime through the view screen on the Enterprise to figure out who the heck is this Khan person and how did you defeat him. I think
that was sounding convoluted just hearing you say it. Talking to Spock on the bridge, on the view screen, in the conservatory with the lead pipe. What? No.
With the lead pipe. I also appreciate Cairo's better distillation here. Space-time is just a single thing. Space-time as just a single thing is a mathematical construct. There's still distinct dimensions, even the model of physics, with different rules, even if they're written as a single four-dimensional thing to make some computations easier. Yeah, Cairo, I'm just a psychologist. I don't come to me with physics, especially.
There is a dimension of time and space. Yeah. Rod Serling is just...
Carl Sagan hosting Twilight Zone.
Squash. Take Carl Sagan and squash him down, and that's Rod Serling.
I love it. Yeah, it's a really good. Oh wait, no, I went Scottish. I was trying to go Arnold, and then I just messed it up.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. I think we've covered the examples. Libby says, "Don't forget body parts." DS9 Fringy episode, is that the one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then Phil also gave me an assist here. The episode all he's talking about is when Chakotay gets injured and is rescued by XPs, although they don't use that term, who place an implant to help.
Was that what you were thinking of?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Phil. That is exactly.
I was thinking of Memorial from what you said. No, I did. Didn't I have I threw one in from Lower Decks, I think. The finale of season 2, First Contact. Which, by the way, everybody, right now on CBS, if you go to First Contact, the title is First Contact. They left off the first. Yeah.
Never
or the second
leave off.
first, I guess.
Never leave off the first.
Never give up, never surrender. Yeah.
No. Never give up. Never.
Because you wind up with different people some of the problem with today's theme, and we jump into this, and I usually try to put some kind of arms around it so we don't just go off with a billion episodes. But part of this is like, well, yeah, a lot of Star Trek is people remotely all working on the same task together. But I mean, some are more outstanding and difficult challenges than others. But the task at the end of First Contact, remember, was to penetrate that asteroid field to go rescue the Archimedes, the other ship. and then they all got in contact and had a plan to strip the hull plating off and be naked. But then things break down. You've got crews on the hull of the ship. You've got the crew on the Archimedes saving themselves with their help. And then you've got Boimler going down, then they've got to get a thing off, and Boimler, Bradward, goes, has to go through cetacean ops to get out to get to the thing, and then the dolphins have to save Boimler to get back, and they all are. There's different people working in different places all at the same time to get the thing done, which I don't. But I was trying to think of a good Lower Decks one, but again, Lower Decks sometimes winds up being people in 3 places working on the same issue, like crashing the officer, the best party.
Yep. All right, let's go to the counselor's log here. This is the part of the show where I do a little bit of a deeper dive into some of the psychology or the mental health of the topic. And so, Larry, I was thinking about this, and this is a similar challenge. The challenge you just described here with Star Trek stories is kind of similar here. Is like there's so many ways in which I could explore some of the research here on remote teamwork and what we know. And what's funny is when you start diving into this research, a lot of this research was done pre-pandemic. A lot of it was done. And a lot of the pre-pandemic research is basically saying...
Or PPR, as we call it.
Yeah. A lot of that research shows that, look, remote work works. People can be productive if they're not at the same space and time. They can work from home. People aren't lazy. There's a lot of benefits to it. There's a lot of benefits to being able to not commute. That saves you time. It's better for your health. You can sleep in longer. It's good for the environment. People have more control over how they organize their day. There are challenges, but those challenges can be overcome. And a lot of people who work remotely tend to really like it and have a lot of satisfaction. And also people who are vulnerable to being bullied or in sexist environments or racist environments, they experience a lot less of it. When you're working remotely, you have to interact with toxic coworkers a lot less. So a lot of it is good. But a lot of that research really felt like it was trying to convince people to give this a shot. That like, hey, look, this stuff works. Because a lot of organizations pre-pandemic were like, no. We need butts and seats. We need you in the cubicles. We need you here. We need to see you because we don't trust that you'll actually get work done.
Yeah. I know. I was just going to say, it's a lot like, it's like the silver lining of crises and catastrophes. Sometimes something emerges, like women working in factories in World War II and even flying planes as WASPs. And, oh, look, women can do the job. And, oh, look, African Americans and Mexican Americans, Hispanics in service units doing just fine, and then, oh, look, we've integrated the military in 3, Truman integrates. I'm talking very American cases here, but
well, I think that's a good.
Sometimes out of a crisis, you do come up with,
So I think what
a hotline after the Cuban Missile Crisis.
What you just mentioned is a good historical parallel to where we are right now, because what's happened with remote teamwork is now organizations know we can do this. We have the tools to do this, and this is a possibility. And again, I put the caveat here that only 35% of the workforce is primarily remote right now, and there are a lot of jobs that either can't be done remotely that require people to be in one space, like a lot of manufacturing jobs, a lot of what we've deemed essential
bus drivers.
Work. Yeah. There's a lot of these kind of things have to be done in person, and so it's not everyone has the access to remote work. But one of the things it's shown us is like it's possible, and it's possible in a lot more ways than we ever thought before. But if you go back to the changes in the workforce that happened with World War II, where women were really integrated in the United States into much more of the manufacturing, what happened when soldiers returned? Well, a lot of the infrastructure that was put into place to support women working, there was a federal program that allowed for the construction of high quality daycare units throughout the country. Funding for that completely disappeared after the war ended. There wasn't
What a
some
concept.
right,
Yeah.
right. You know, like a lot of the infrastructure
It's
that
almost like those women were essential workers.
this is the thing, and this is one of the challenges now, is there's massive discrepancy with how people who are able to remote from work experience it. If you have young children and you don't have any access to childcare, or you don't have good quality childcare, it's very difficult to do this. And if you also have unvaccinated children, it's very difficult to do this. Like there's internet bandwidth issues if you don't have a high quality internet connection. You aren't able to participate in the same way that your colleagues might, or your children aren't able to connect to school. We haven't talked about online instruction really. I know that's not our episode over here, but what we're seeing is there's a lot of discrepancy in how people are experiencing remote work. There's massive possibilities of loneliness here as well, and at the place that we're kind of in now is we don't know what's the right way to move forward here. Some people are debating hybrid work, where sometime they're away, sometime they're in person. There's debates about maybe some of the workforce will be home at some point while others are on site, which introduces more complexity. Like, why show up to work if you're on Zoom meetings all day at work? So there's a lot of the benefits have really shown to be true. And what we're discovering now is there's a lot of new challenges that people didn't really think about. So I don't know if you remember back at our teamwork episode, Larry, I talked about one of the most important qualities of an effective team is psychological safety, feeling safe enough to share different points of views that might challenge the leader.
Yes.
Right? We talked,
and I think my K3 for that was the notion of a writer's room.
yes.
If you have a free one versus, and most of the time on Star Trek they'd been free, aside from a couple times when they weren't. But yeah, it's that same thing. Yeah,
and we use the historical example of this Spatial Challenger disaster, and the fantastic documentary on that is still on Netflix if you haven't seen it. It's a wonderful example of groupthink. I shouldn't say a wonderful example. It's a good example of groupthink, and it's really a very tragic example of it as well. But this is what's so important to teams, and we're still trying to figure out, what does psychological safety mean in a remote team? If that's the most important thing for teams to work, is to feel safe enough to share different points of views with each other. There's some people who are talking about, well, maybe what psychological safety in a remote team means is you feel safe enough talking about the ways in which your personal life is impacting your work life when you're working remotely. So if you're working from home, feeling safe enough to share the ways in which your home stuff is impacting your ability to do work. So if you have kids running and screaming in the background, if there's something going on with your home that might impact your ability to get stuff done. You know, people can't see all the stuff that's happening around you that might be impacting your ability to do work. Exactly. Larry, I have no idea what's behind that wall. What your neighbors are, how they might be distracting you, causing problems.
Behind this wall, it's a new car. No, I'm sorry.
Behind the other wall is just a goat. So don't pick curtain number 2.
It's yours worth of macaroni and cheese from some brand you've never heard of.
Yeah, I know. So there's a lot we don't know. about how to make this stuff work. There's a lot that's been discussed about Zoom fatigue, and I'll kind of get into that. So research is moving fast here, but no one really has all the right answers for like what is the magical equation to make this work. There's some ideas I'll share in our away mission in a moment, but I thought I'd just do a little snapshot of what we know and what we don't know here about remote teamwork. But Larry, you know what I could go for right now?
What could you go for?
I could go for a K3 factor. This is...
Oh, I was hoping you were going to say like a couple of drinks, but okay, we'll do that.
Still plenty of coffee I'm working on right here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was almost a cheat with this topic here for real. So the K3 factor is the only clue to mental health we got in the original series. There on the bio screen, on the bio monitor. The term biobed wasn't invented until TNG, by the way. Those were just the sick bay beds. But yeah, so a corollary behind the scenes, as opposed to what's in stories and on screen, which is what I try to bring here every week. The obvious thing is where my head went. The obvious thing, and I don't have a lot like photography of this, but the obvious thing is in the pandemic, the way the current shows have all had to remotely get together to get the shows finished. And it's hard enough with the scare. I mean, a lot of people have been praising Discovery this year, among other things, for having more thoughtful, character moments. And it's like, well, a lot of that is like, it's much easier under the pandemic protocols. It was much easier to have 2 people scenes, maybe 3, than it was to have 6, or having extras in the background and all that kind of thing. But the real challenge and the real show, and and a lot of the post production, like a lot of art staffers work all over the place anyway. The shows may be shot in Toronto and Picard in LA, but the post on that, like editors and art people and visual effects people are all over the place, and and now we have the tech to do that, and they ship their work in. They don't have to all have to be sitting in the same art department room together with tables apart. Although I missed that. But, with everything being so digital anyway, that's easy to do. But the pandemic took it to a new level. What was really wacky were things like recording the scores remotely, which was a real, you've got everybody in their own Zoom box, a whole orchestra, recording these incredible Star Trek scores. And that's what took the time on top of the remote that they were already used to doing. So you go, well, okay, fine, and we can do that. Yeah, but what's amazing is when you think of, and they weren't doing it virtually like Zoom, but the shots I sent you were, remote. Star Trek has always had remote aspects that put in toward the whole, because not everybody was at the lot. So here's one of the best cases. This is a company called Image G, which all the motion control from the Berman era was done at Image G. After the ILM did the pilot for Farpoint, and then after that, by the 3rd season or so, all the old model. This is a Jem'Hadar fighter. That's David Stipes waving there, and that's Dan Curry sitting in a director's chair. But they're looking at the monitors. That's that's like about 5, 6, 8 blocks from the studio. So visual effects was one place. I've got another one there where the guys with the big computer. Yeah,
so
that's
digital. Sound?
No, they're compositing visual effect. They're working on Twisted, I think, the first time that Sandrines is on Voyager. This is season 1, but they're working on visual effects compositing, like putting the elements together into one big picture and tweaking stuff. That's Digital Domain. They're out in Santa Monica.
Are they still around?
Huh?
Are they still around?
I'm not sure, but I was going to say Santa Monica was where a lot of visual effects places were back in the day. Still are. And there's been a lot of shakeout, in the visual effects world. But they were. It may not sound like a big deal. Oh, Hollywood, out where Paramount is, out to Santa Monica. But if you've ever tried to drive that,
it's a drive.
It's a drive.
It's a drive.
And then the last one is one that's always been.
But Larry, there's the light rail now that'll take you to Santa Monica.
Okay, but you've got to get there from. You've got to get over to the station. Yeah, around and about. So, and this is Jim Willington. So people like audio, the audio places have always been off lot. I thought I had one of Bill Wistrom at Modern Sound, which if you watch all 18 years, all the sound was done when the actors would go to redub their lines and all that kind of thing.
All the
All
ADR.
kind of sound effects. Any kind of ADR was there. Oh, look at you. No ADR. Yeah. What is that? Audio dementia retention? No. But anyway, my point here is that was Jim Wilmington at his home studio in Vermont, even before the big voiceover revolution and everybody had a studio in their home. So my point there is that all along there has been a lot of remote contributions, teamwork behind the scenes on Star Trek, even before the pandemic made it, like a news feature that the show documentaries could cover.
Yeah.
So probably nothing really shocking, surprising there, but
No, but I think this is what's cool about this example is it kind of shows how collaborative productions always are. TV, film is one of the most collaborative enterprises out there, but it's also I think it's cool to show how it's all asynchronous. There's making a show is both synchronous, like you need to have the actors, the cameras, the directors, same room, same time. You also need makeup there. You need costume. There's certain people that have to be in the same place at the same time. But then there's all the stuff that happened before, like the writing of it and the set creation and all that stuff. And then there's so much stuff that happens after. And then you bring the actors back to do ADR. Like, can you do that line again? It didn't really work. Like, or we heard Rick Berman was coughing during it. Like can you redo this? It's both remote, time and space can be completely changed. Nowadays, you can film someone in one place and you can green screen it and set it so that they're talking to someone who was never there, and you can film them in a different time and place. Not the ideal way to do it, but it's a good example, Larry, of how productions have always been this remote team project, and how some of that's part of the reason why we were able to get a Discovery season 3 is and a Discovery season 4. They were able to work through these things during it was really season 4, right? That was filmed during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. Season 3 mostly finished prior to.
Right. It was wrapping up 3 was delayed. Yeah. Getting the scoring done was the big bugaboo. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's cool to see how Hollywood has been able to, in some ways, work through this stuff during a pandemic. So no major surprises here, but a good reminder of how much this is a collaborative process.
So I failed. Okay. Oh, you know what? I'll throw one at you. Do you know that in the height of it was doable, but Joe Menosky was one of the more out there. He was an interesting guy, still is. And he came on. It was one thing where Renee Echevarria had the chance to write for Star Trek, and they asked him, but he didn't want to move from New York. Mm. And they were finally like, would you please get out here if you want to write scripts? But Joe Menosky worked with them and then wanted to go back to Europe and live in some remote place in Italy. And he wrote several scripts in the Next Gen days, faxing them in.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And he kept up enough of a bond that then later on he did come back to LA. But there were times in the late Next Gen years, so they were like, they were all like in Marvel, we're faxing with Joe Menosky in Italy. This is such an amazing modern world. So take off your historical laughing at faxing, but it was the first time something like that blew people's minds.
Yeah. It's you can think of it as a slower, lower tech version of email. Even though
you chuckled? Did I surprise you with that fact?
Oh well, you know what it made me think of is for some of the Americans here, you might remember the AT&T ads of the early '90s that showed, have you ever driven across country without stopping for directions? You will, and the company that will bring it to you is AT&T. There's a series of these ads that are very prophetic in terms of what the technology is going to be, and this was
very pathetic.
prophetic.
Oh, prophet.
Yeah. They're all very well predictive of what's going to happen. Of course, in that situation, they were talking about how GPS is going to change our lives. But there's one that always cracks me up. It's this guy sitting at a beach that says, "Have you ever sent a fax from the beach? You will." The company that will bring it to you is AT&T.
The first StarTrek.com store was a partnership with with IBM, and they had those 2 or 3. You remember the kid carrying the Borg statue around? Do you remember this commercial? It's on. I used to show this at cons, and it's on YouTube now, so it's something special. But I always loved they were talking about the kids carrying his full-size Borg statue around, and he's in New York or something, and everybody he passes of all these different persuasions are talking about the kid carrying this Borg statue around on the subway and down the street in New York. And they're catching people, and there's 2 guys at a bar watch him go by, and he says, "Yeah, you know where he got it? Where? On the web." "The web? Yeah, he got it on the web." It's that same kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's funny. That's back when we
and the announcer goes, "The web."
It's back when we still called it the information superhighway. Oh man. All right, so getting to the away mission here, Larry. This is the part of the show where I want to give people some tips on how to apply the kind of stuff that we've been talking about to their own lives. So, I realize you can't necessarily work remotely if you don't work remotely. I absolutely understand that. And I also understand that even if you do work remotely, you might have limited control over how much you can do about your own life and the way that you work. For example, like if you have a screaming child, you can't necessarily there's things there that can't be controlled. That being said,
is that what that sound is?
Yes, that would be that.
I didn't think you were like in an aviary, and that was an interesting tropical bird behind. Okay.
I always try to remember the avian Zindi species by having a bunch of wild birds, vultures, that are living in my home. No, that would be my 4.5-year-old.
When we started this, she was merely 2.
Yeah, I know. More than half of her life, it feels like, has been in the pandemic. So, okay, so there's a great Harvard Business Review article. I refer a lot of people to this, called "Making Your Remote Team Feel Like a Team." And what they outline here is 4 different things that you can apply from what helps people to feel connected and supported together, and how you can apply that to your own more remote team. And so I just want to highlight a few of these things. And one of the things that they talk about, and again, you might not have super control over your work, but maybe there's ways in which you can integrate some of these things into how you do interact with others. And one of the first things is building a little buffer times into your meeting. So, Larry, when we work in person, we might be walking to a meeting together, and we might leave a meeting together, and we might chit-chat. How's it going? How was your weekend? What are you up to? Things like that. Sometimes we don't do that online. We might show up to a meeting, we kind of wait for everyone to show up, and then we talk business, and then we end. It's very callous and impersonal. So one of the things to do is to build in some of that into our meetings. Either have it as a set thing that you will spend a few minutes talking about, catching up with everyone. Some people don't like that. And so maybe you can schedule it as a social activity that, like, every Friday we have this optional time to kind of connect, and we're just going to talk about movies and TV or something like that. So building some of that into our meetings. The second thing here is creating some type of team rituals. We really need rituals to sort of guide us and help us to feel connected, like we have at the start of the show, like we have at the end of the show, like our segments. We have our own rituals here. It takes some of the stress and anxiety out of interacting with each other when you know what to expect, right? So that's really important. And then a couple other things to talk about is working out loud. So having things like what's called a stand-up meeting, where you are meeting for 15 minutes at one point of the day, kind of talking about what you're working on, what problems are coming up, how you can support one another, things like that. And the last thing they talk about that I really like is sharing the pain. So people work across. I don't think Star Trek does this well, but when you're working across different time zones, when you're working with different regions, with people who are different circumstances, having a little bit of rotation, so you're not always meeting East Coast 9 a.m. because that's 6 a.m. for the West Coast, or you're. This is something we try when we pick the time for the show. We wanted a time zone that might work for a lot of our audience, and when we do off-hour shows, we try to find something that can work for a wide variety of people, and we try to rotate the pain a little bit here. Similarly, like if you're gonna do an evening meeting, don't do it all the time because that might be hard on people who have young children. So kind of sharing the pain a little bit. So
that's what I mean. Everything I do, and I was doing, online virtual before we were doing it before it was cool. But Portal 47 especially, and my Tuesday's live is at 1 p.m. so we can have the Europeans with us. It's kind of hard to do Asia, but then the Star Trek market is kind of outside the U.S. and Canada. It's England and Germany, and the Australians are down there, and they're like so far ahead across the date line that they're like the next morning, and you can kind of catch them depending on how you go. But no, that's something I always try to do. And then in Portal, I have our Ask Dr. Trek roundtable. I do one for Primetime America, and the other one is Primetime for the Europeans, which is still midday for Americans that can get away and cheat work or whatever. But yeah, I mean and we're in this world where that's why the Netflix controversy was so for the Discovery premiere for the global audience. It kind of took the Americans by surprise. They were just looking at it like numbers on a sheet. When you've got maybe a third of the viewers of Discovery were going to be out of it, but it's very much that we've got this technology and this communications network and grid where we can be instantaneous or almost instantaneous, and try to, but we still have the time zone factor. So it's like just trying to adapt to that and recognize that you've got the access, but now we're not all on the same page time wise. So it's interesting how just the last 5-10 years. We can think, it's great to say think globally, but now you've got to put it in practice.
Yeah.
Did I wipe you away? Sorry.
I mean, this is case in point, right? There's so many things that we can do now, but we haven't quite figured out the best ways to do these things now. And like no one who did any of this research, Larry, anticipated remote working combined with remote schooling for generations of children and having school shut down at one time. Like no one predicted that at all. And no one predicted from that remote learning research, no one predicted, oh yeah, remote learning, but like almost no possibility of safely interacting with your coworkers during off hours because there's a pandemic. Mm-hmm. So I think we're
much less anyone in humanity.
Right. Or, the thing that this is actually a good way to open up our hailing frequencies here. Libby's kind of shared some comments about how she's gone back in work and doesn't necessarily feel safe. So forget psychological safety. Let's talk about physical health safety and working in these cubicles when we still have a pandemic, where we have a variant as well that is really, really contagious. Fortunately, some vaccines seem to be doing well at at stopping hospitalizations or reducing the chance of hospitalizations, but there's still a chance you can get infected, and and we still have like young children are not vaccine eligible. So like there's a lot of challenges here, Larry, to like actually making this stuff work. Our community has had so many wonderful examples. I think this is a top.
Our community has been very patient with us. I feel like we've gone off on more than one tangent today. So thanks, everybody. I've actually been valiantly trying to catch up in the chat here, but
Yeah,
I'm only partly ignoring you, Ali. I'm really trying to.
I like JR says Australia is in the future. They're already into Sunday morning. That is absolutely true. Someone here, Dan was saying the kids' vocal cords must be built for endurance. Impressive. Glory to you and your house, Dr. Ali. Thank you, Dan. I think all credit right now goes to my wife, who is doing something.
Sounds like the aviary has gone into night mode or something.
Something.
Yeah.
I think she dragged my daughter outside, and something's happening there. So glory goes to New Anne.
Glory to you and your yard. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's a lot of really wonderful comments here that I want to make sure we get to, because everyone has some experience here. And speaking of Dan had a comment here. What I've learned about working from home is that a lot of people find it easier if they have an actual area specifically set up to work from, so they don't get distracted by other things. Dan, this is a great comment, and this relates to working from home, but also learning from home. Usually classrooms and work environments are really optimized for work. There aren't a ton of distractions. There aren't a ton of things that are exciting. Stephen King writes about this in his memoir, that when he writes with like this blank wall of nothingness in front of him so that he's not distracted.
Wow.
But when a lot of us, when we started working from home, if this was a new thing for us, maybe we're working from the couch. Well, what associations does your mind and body have with the couch? Watching Star Trek, relaxing, hanging out, like having some snacks. So building up an environment that's just dedicated to work, even if it's a little tiny corner of your home, that can be helpful here. So good comment there. Cairo said, I have way more problems talking about personal thing over video chat. It's much easier for me to talk about those things really face to face. Also, as remote work communication is often reduced to purely work related communications and no water cooler talk is happening, personal topics often get completely ignored and non-essential information doesn't flow at all. Cairo, this is exactly what that buffer time I was trying to speak to here is.
I mean, of course, bosses would say, "Why are you communicating non-essential information anywhere in the first place?"
Yeah, a bad one would definitely say that.
Yeah.
You know, so much of the socializing that happens at work, and the reasons why we like going to work often are our coworkers or the mission of the organization. You know, these things that help us to stay productive. It's so easy to make them non-essential parts of our work, which is exactly, I think, the problem that Cairo is talking about.
When I worked in news, it was in the 80s, and some people, like California, was having its golden decade, but for the middle of the country, there was an oil bust and the real estate, the savings and loan crisis. And I was out of college and worked in daily news, and there were 3 years we got no raises. And it was really rough. I mean, the whole middle of the country was in a recession while everybody else was talking about the roaring 80s. And I was like, sorry, no. But the group that I worked with was so amazing. And we were all, most of us were of a like mind anyway on a lot of things. And that's what kept you sane and kept you, the people I work with and still are good friends, very remote now. And it's been a few years since then. But we had a great, we socialized together and everything too, but that made it bearable.
Yeah.
So, and we believed in we loved our work and we enjoyed each other. The situation we were in for a long time was not great, but rather than like leave that company, that paper, or leave the career entirely, we hung it out. So we just,
Yeah. I was talking to a good friend of mine the other day who I went to school with, and is a excuse me, is a full-time practicing therapist. This is a person who was made to be a therapist. He is someone who loves spending like 10 hours a day
In a chair.
in a chair with other people, helping them through some of their most difficult mental health related challenges, right? He loves this work. And I haven't spoken to him for a while, so we were chatting, and I asked him how he's doing, and he said, absolutely horrible. And I said, why? I thought you loved doing therapy. And he said, I do, in person. I can't stand it with a screen. I'm losing so much of the stuff that I love doing about this work, that seeing people, seeing the changes, all the, like, just the sterility of the environment where you don't have all of the things that bring this working relationship to life. I'm robbed of all of those things, and I am burnt out. I hate this. I hate doing work in this way. So, Larry, you're talking about how much that team really helped you through that difficult time. I think one of the challenges here is a lot of people are feeling very lonely, and they don't have access to the kind of stuff that they want. And then there's stuff like this. Cairo says sounds in the background, like earlier today when someone on our local Star Trek fan Zoom meeting, when someone heard something beeping in someone's background, and then I realized it was my washing machine and I had not been hearing it through my own headphones. That's a great example. We're this far into the pandemic, and stuff like that happens all the time. It happens all the time. I'm always on meetings where there's something you'd think we would have solved this problem by now, and we haven't. And it's tricky.
Well, most of my, my portal roundtables are my biggest or when we last Saturday. By the way, I'll say real quick, if you didn't see this, the Trek Talks the Trek Geeks and Roddenberry Productions co-sponsored and John Billingsley spearheaded, with Rod Roddenberry's $30,000 match. When they passed 30,000, they still kept making more money. I think the link, it may still be open, but anyway, they wound up making 73,000. But it's like events like that.
It's amazing.
Yeah, which is great. We talk about being Zoom. Most of my Zooms have still been one-to-one. Like, we're all here in the chat, but as far as seeing faces, aside from my Portal 47 roundtables, as far as actual faces, that's one of the few times I have multiple faces. Or my entrepreneurs business group circle, we have group meetings, I get multiple people. But a lot of times I'm live streaming solo, or the two of us, and we've got chat, which is great. But as far as like the big token Zoom grid box that everybody, it was a thing. It was such a thing at the beginning of the pandemic. Remember, there was Saturday Night Live did sketches, and Progressive Insurance parodied it. I mean, it was such a cultural thing for everybody that you could use it as satire comedy. I have very few of those actually. Now, I mean, for a while, and there were some other things. I did my nonfiction Fridays, but I don't really have those big meetings of a lot of faces like you're talking about, like Cairo was talking about, hearing the washing machine and that kind of thing. So, I mean, it's like I've enjoyed, and I think this technology has been a lifeline to all of. I mean, what would the pandemic have been like if we didn't have virtual? Very
different.
You still have your phone. You still call people, but this has been amazing. And then, but it's been a great sanity lifeline for everybody, I guess. Even though there are the limitations, like your therapist friend, that it's not the same. Yeah, it's probably a hell of a lot better than doing it all by phone.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So Libby's speaking to, again, safety here. Ironically, I feel much safer working remotely. I feel so unsafe in my office. It's affecting my work. People are coughing, obviously very sick and so forth. Very hard to concentrate. However, I know that it will pass when the surge does. So
it's like getting on a plane every day.
Yeah, I know. This is, Larry, I think a couple of things here to note is safety is very important. We talk about psychological safety, but physical safety, but also like people have experienced this pandemic differently. And for some people who have experienced it in more of a traumatic way, where it's very much changed their big views of themselves, about the world, about the future. hearing a cough, seeing a cough, these kind of
Right.
things are going to impact them very differently.
Or sneeze even.
Yeah, and we talk about essential workers. One of the this often doesn't get talked about enough, but one of the reasons why the restaurant industry and a lot of the service industry is having a hard time fill positions is they had the largest number. If you look at the by industry,
Hmm.
the restaurant industry had some of the largest number of deaths resulting from COVID-19. They're having a hard time fill those slots because a lot of people died working in those roles. And so we have a workforce that has lost a lot of people and a workforce that has been really struggling with grief and in all the other ways in which this pandemic has impacted us. So the impact of all of this stuff is very different depending on what you do, where you're at, your life experience, all of that kind of stuff. There's a few other things I want to mention here. Charlotte says live theater is still severely impacted by the pandemic. I've lost count of how many productions have had to close early due to COVID outbreaks during the
Right now,
latest
yeah.
surge. Yeah, unfortunately, fortunately, thanks to things we've learned in the pandemic, we're still able to film and offer on-demand viewing of shows, but it still just really sucks for the cast, crew,
Yeah.
and audience. I know, Larry, you have a theater background as well, and I don't, but I love live
Still
theater.
like you anyway.
That is one of those things that live performances especially have to happen live. It's quite challenging to do that right now. All it takes is one person sometimes in a production to get sick, and it's enough to shut down the entire production.
As we've seen with even shooting,
Yeah.
shutting down, as Picard did.
Picard shut down. Picard
Right.
season
About
3 shut down. Yeah. And then Charlotte also said, while working remotely has worked quite well for me, many of my colleagues with kids can't wait to be back in the office, as working from home with their kids kids around has been quite disruptive for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody. I mean, it's been a different perspective for everybody. There's been no uniform. I mean, you can see big chunks of people, but it hasn't been uniform for everybody at all. And it's like, are you in the country with bad Wi-Fi?
Right.
Versus and slow dial-up and all, or whatever. I said slow dial-up. Some people may still have slow dial-up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a crank phone and Sarah the operator. But
yeah. One of the my daughter was home last week because her school was closed because there was a COVID case, and it brought back memories of that early era of 2020 when there was just no childcare options for us. The challenge for me, Larry, is like there is no sense of deep work when my child is home as well. I might get 5-10 minutes in here, but as some of you witnessed, if my daughter is in not a good place, like my mind is going back and forth. I can't sustain my attention. And if I bounce off of a meeting, I can't sit and do the work because my daughter now wants my attention. It's constantly shifting attention. And one of the things we know about attention research is the more your attention is bouncing, the more mistakes you make, the less creative you are, the more difficult and exhausting it is. So Charlotte is very right about this. Christoph.
Oh, I'm sorry. What were you saying?
What I was about to say is Christoph said, I rarely accept appointments before 11 a.m. My office is a 5-minute walk from my apartment, and that makes 11 a.m. just manageable. I might have something to do with most of my Zooms, including North America. And this is one of, Christoph, you're speaking to schedule flexibility, which is a big benefit of working remotely. You can oftentimes have some flexibility with when you schedule different things to fit your unique life circumstances, which is really great. And Nathaniel, way back earlier in the show, said this week's episode of Prodigy showed several principles from education with regards to cultivating expertise, reliance on more experienced peers, like scaffolding your learning, practice and repetition and persistence. It did one better than when Boimler perfected his approach to the Borg. I love this episode, Larry. It's just a great Star Trek episode, a great Star Trek story, but also a great story, I think, for kids to get as well.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was like this story. It was a great Star Trek story, and just on the Star Trek side of things, my mind was going to cause and effect, and timescape, and next phase, and Shattered on Voyager. I don't know if we had any time, and we had like the really weird, like the time, like O'Brien in his own mind, like in I'm going blank on it, like Picard was in Inner Light.
Yeah.
But still, no, it was some of the best storytelling. I'm just amazed, especially when I look at something like Memory Alpha and I see them write out the plot in detail, and it's like the synopsis of this episode, if you get into the detail of it, is feels like as long as an hour show. Or when you're watching it, you go, wait, this was 22 minutes? They pack so much in. We used to think that with Lower Decks because you were busy like frame grabbing everything, screen capping everything, but Prodigy really packs a lot in.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. A couple more comments I want to get to. Dave had a couple of great comments here. My work is allocated to almost.
This is my notes when I'm
it's a lot.
There. Yeah.
And it's a half an hour show. Dave
said
my work is allocated to almost all field work, so working remotely didn't affect us as much, except I really do miss seeing my coworkers now that it's all nil. And Dave also said, if you're remote working by itself, it's challenging. How about onboarding, hiring new folks during a pandemic?
Yeah.
Tricky business getting someone used to work without in-person guidance when you only know them from a Zoom interview. I think a lot of places that have been working remotely have now hired and onboarded and also let go people all remote, which is, it's that movie Up in the Air that was about George Clooney remotely firing people. It's kind of like we've had all of that now at scale. So yeah, it's absolutely happening. Charlotte says, my workplace won't allow you on site without a negative test if you've had close contact with someone with COVID, plus additional quarantine rules and such, regardless of vaccination status. Some people are doing that. Some people aren't. Some people don't have the resources. Some people don't believe in that. So it's just so much diversity here. And Andrew says, multitasking is a lie. And that is absolutely true. Humans we just can't do that.
Yeah. I want to say real quick, I'm trying to think if she's been with us, but Louise A., who's on YouTube, said she's in Spain. So Louise, hi. If this is your first time, great. I want to say maybe you've been with us before, but either way, yes.
Good to see you here. Welcome.
I think maybe you had been, but I'm thinking of you, and then Sophia's in Portugal, so and Spain's much bigger than Portugal, I know, but I think of you as next door to each other, so in my American, bubble of thinking perspective. But anyway, I'm glad you're with us. Yeah.
Larry, I think with that, we are...
I'm just going to say real quick, apologies to everybody. I'm like a third of the way through the chat. I'm just like way behind here. And I know but I feel like we've had a really good conversation today, and people, I think we've stirred up a lot here. So I will try to catch up later. But I always do. I always try to go through and see new faces and new names, especially. But seems like everybody had a good time today.
I think so, Larry. We covered a lot of ground here.
See what I said? Yeah.
And it is that time of the show here, Larry. Larry, what you got cooking this week at Trekland?
Is the music playing?
Music's playing.
I'm like Michael Collins of this show. I'm the only one that can't tell what's going on. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Like, there's nothing right. I mean, there are some conventions coming up that we're tentatively going back to. I'll be at Gallifrey, which is going to be here, the WhoCon here in LA at the end of February, which was the last convention I was at before the lockdowns happened 2 years ago. But it's a very reduced footprint, and that's in another month. So we'll see what the Omicron wave is doing by then. But I really don't, and there's a couple more things further into the future going on and a lot of stuff up in the air, but I don't have anything Nothing with any of the projects right at the moment, aside from we're just chugging along trying to get going. The Trek Files will be back from its hiatus in February with a couple of new twists, so I invite everybody to stay tuned to hear more about that. LarryNemecek.com and Larry Nemecek on Twitter, and subscribe on YouTube while you're not doing anything else.
Yeah,
How about you?
There's not much I got cooking this week besides just trying to get through the week.
Is the Psych Show psyched out?
Psych Show's not psyched. I've got episodes scripted and storyboarded, but I'm just kind of running behind. The day job is taking up a lot of time here. But as always, I'm at Ali Mattu on social media, and on Twitter, Instagram, and the Psych Show on YouTube is where I hang out over there. Gosh, I don't have anything cooking right now.
It's all kind of like,
it's all in
what's
hibernation.
wrong with me? I don't have the thing to say.
It's all in hibernation. But next week we're gonna be back. So Larry, we've got a few more episodes of Star Trek Prodigy before they go on hiatus again for season 1.
Well, that's the thing. We had all the news this week about everything finally fit, or a lot of new details. So we've got Picard right around the corner.
We've got Discovery.
Strange New World's coming. Yes,
Discovery, Picard, Strange New World, Lower Decks.
And
then Prodigy again. So there's a lot of Star Trek in the cooker. We'll have a lot more to talk about next week. Who knows what we'll talk about, but we'll be here. And until then, my friends, live long and prosper.
Creamettes. That was the thing. Creamettes. Trek well, everybody.